Good morning. Let's see, we're going to have to. Good morning. Hopefully, I am live, and I would love a little help with my technology from anyone who might be watching. I've got multiple things going on here, so I'm going to try to watch for comments and answer questions as well as I can. If anyone can give me a little thumbs up or a little wave just to let me know that I am indeed live in the group, that would be awesome. And I'm going to be looking all around here just to make sure on where I need to be. So bear with me for just a moment. We'll see if we've... Okay. Let's see here. Oh, good morning, Elaine. Excellent, thank you. So now I know I'm where I need to be. I just want to say thank you to Ruby, first of all, for organizing this fantastic event and allowing me time to speak into my passion. It's been wonderful so far. I'm learning so much, and I'm hoping that you might be able to get a few tidbits out of my talk. So, I'm Monica. I have a dog training business in Barrington, New Hampshire in the United States. So over here for me, it's early morning. If I look a little bleary-eyed, this is early for me for a Saturday. You all are probably over there enjoying your lunch. So I work primarily with family dogs, and I use enrichment planning to build a foundation that everything else works off of. So I had a marvelous presentation, kind of spoke to Ruby about it, and she encouraged me to just kind of go for it live without the presentation. I chickened out, and unfortunately technology made that decision for me because I'm not able to share my presentation, so you get me. So we're going to talk a little bit about, I'm going to go through a couple of things that we're going to define enrichment. I'm going to give you a little bit of history. We're going to talk about planning, some guidelines. I'm going to touch on emotions, the categories of enrichment, assessing what you're doing to determine whether it actually is considered enrichment, and we'll give you some examples and maybe talk a little bit about what I do with my little pup. So if we start just with a very basic definition of enrichment, a dictionary definition would be the action of improving or enhancing the quality of something, or the act of making fuller or more meaningful or rewarding. Let me just see here, excuse me. Dr. Hal Markowitz, who's a driving force behind enrichment in zoos, and I'll talk more about him a bit later, thought that enrichment should be a synonym for more like nature, so meeting an animal's needs to empower them to engage in species typical behavior in healthy and appropriate ways. And two of my wonderful mentors, Allie Bender and Emily Strong, recently came out with a book called Canine Enrichment for the Real World. Excuse me. And their definition focuses on setting up an environment that allows a dog to engage in meeting needs in a safe and feasible way as possible. So just kind of boiling that down, I know I've said needs a few times, so what we're looking at when we're implementing enrichment planning is basically meeting all of our dog's needs. And I might use animal and dog interchangeably. Your loved family member could be a dog, a cat, bird, any really living being that you share your enrichment can benefit. Hal Markowitz was really instrumental in bringing the idea of enriched environments to zoos, and he identified 13 categories of animal needs that should be addressed. And I've got a list because there are 13 of them. So when we're thinking about enrichment planning, these are the categories that he identified: health, hygiene, diet and nutrition, physical exercise, mental stimulation, sensory stimulation, foraging, instinctual behaviors, independence, safety, security, social interaction, environment. And Allie Beth added one category to that, and that was calming and rest. So right off the bat, you can see that enrichment encompasses so much more than what we might, in this modern time, have kind of drifted toward thinking of as just giving your dog a food toy. So I'm going to give you just the very briefest of histories, and this probably all started when humans started observing animals, started observing them in their natural habitat. But in the 1920s, psychobiologist Robert Yerkes, who primarily worked with primates, noticed that the captive populations were displaying these very repetitive or stereotypical behaviors. And at the time, this was important because that demonstrated stress in the animal, and these captive animals were used for breeding. So his interest was primarily to lower their stress so that their breeding programs would be more successful. And then in the, many people contributed to this work and built on this work. And in the 1940s, Donald Hebbs, another researcher, psychologist, did some experimenting of his own with rats, and he wanted to kind of compare and contrast the difference between rats raised in a laboratory and rats in a more a richer environment. So he took some rats home to his children to raise, where they had social interaction and items in their environment to engage with. The other set of rats were at the library. Like I said, it's early. If only they had been at the library. They were at the laboratory, and after they had spent their early time being reared in these different environments, he kind of brought them back and tested them, and found that the rats that were raised in his home with his children, with these items to interact with, were much better problem solvers. And he labeled these two different environments as richer was the environment with his children, and impoverished was the environment in the laboratory. And around the 1960s, the term enrichment kind of came into common usage to define these richer environments. So I thought that was really interesting. Again, many people contributing to this work, but in the 60s, Marion and Keller Breland, who worked under B.F. Skinner, continued on with that work, and they saw that behavior was more than just based on conditioned responses. They labeled it as complex mental states, and their work led them to see that excuse me, I'm getting all kinds of beeps and dings. I'm sorry if you can hear those. To realize that even if an animal was well fed, they suffered stress if they weren't able to express the normal behaviors of hunting and foraging, and what they called working for food. So that's your briefest history. We're skipping something. Following on from them, we come to Hal Markowitz, who originally studied animals in their wild habitats, and then brought his knowledge into the zoo world. And he implemented the systematic data collection systems, which are kind of what zoos use today, is that documentation of what they're doing. And he is really instrumental in bringing the whole field of enrichment into the zoo worlds. And as was mentioned in the prior speaker's video, although we don't typically think of our personal animals as captive, you know, they absolutely are, in a much kinder way, of course, but we're responsible for meeting all their needs, much like caretakers in a zoo. So Hal Markowitz had a hand in creating the SPIDER model for zoos, and that's an acronym for setting goals, planning, implementation, documentation, evaluation, and readjustment. And that's a model that we can use with our own animals in a kind of a pared down way to evaluate how our enrichment planning is going. So that's your definition and a little bit of history. And then I want to talk about, you know, our side of things a little bit. So when we're getting ready to do some enrichment planning, we first of all have to do a little bit of study about our animal, whatever species it is, and we want to do some study about the individual that's in front of us. So enrichment is very individualized. And it's dependent on that particular animal's needs. Regardless of whether we all have dogs, they are, as we all know, they're each individuals. And even within a breed, while we may be able to identify some commonalities because of our hand in their breeding, each animal is an individual. So you're going to kind of take a look at who your particular dog is in terms of breed, and then who they are as an individual. And you want to think at this point about whatever you decide to add or even take away. Enrichment is not always additions. Sometimes it's removing something to meet an animal's needs. You want to think about whether that is sustainable for you. Can you do this long term? And of course, when we're doing enrichment planning, there are going to be adjustments along the way, but it does no good for your animal to have some lofty goals and then a week later you can't do any of it because it's just, it doesn't fit into your family or lifestyle. Excuse me. And along that line, when you are doing your planning, you're going to try to think about either additions or opportunities that you can provide your animal that will meet multiple needs, and that helps you to have a sustainable plan. So for instance, you know, I love free work. I know that's been talked about before. If we're doing free work with our animal, that can be meeting multiple needs. There's some physical exercise going on there. There's some sensory stimulation, mental stimulation, foraging. So just kind of evaluating what you're doing. And of course, one of the things that I do quite often with my own dog is just get out into the woods. And I like to call it meandering. Some people will call it decompression walks, a dog-led walk, where I, ahead of time, know I have a certain amount of time to spend with my dog, and I basically am the follower. I observe nature myself. I observe how my dog interacts. She has the time to engage with whatever is there in a way that suits her. So, and when we're doing our planning, we want to remember that we have to take a very descriptive approach. We don't prescribe enrichment for our animal. It's not about us saying, I'm going to give my dog an enrichment toy and they're going to be enriched. It's more, My dog has a need for some foraging and some mental stimulation, so I'm going to present this opportunity. I'm going to observe them while they're engaged in this opportunity, and then I will assess their behavior afterwards to see whether that was actually appropriate for the animal, what their behavior looks like after, and then I can either label that as enrichment or not. And if not, then I'll change my plan and try something else. Um, So I just want to talk about emotion a little bit because, as I just said, I'm going to just check the comments. Yep. Thank you everyone for watching. You know, we're doing a lot of observation when we're thinking about enrichment planning, and what we're observing we really need to understand. So animals, dogs have a rich emotional life, and we need to not only be able to recognize that, but we need to value that, and we need to respond to it appropriately. So, let's see. Jack Panskep identified 7 core emotions. So rage, fear, distress, panic, play, lust, care, and seeking. And I did some studying with Carolina Westlund, who's a Swedish ethologist, and she uses a core effect space model where you have an X and Y axis, low arousal, high arousal, and then unpleasant to pleasant emotions. In the unpleasant side, obviously, you would have rage, fear, panic, depression, and our goal with enrichment is to move our animal over into that playful, curious, and relaxed and content side of the core effect space. And in order to make sure we're doing that, our understanding of our animal has to be we have to have a good understanding. So whether that's through observing body language or feedback signals, excuse me, I'm losing my voice. Their basic behaviors, it's really important when you're doing your planning. So kind of as an umbrella over your whole enrichment plan is agency. And agency is the sense of control your animal, your dog has over their actions and outcomes. So many times, I think what you might see is people offering some activity to an animal, and the animal either engages or doesn't engage. But I don't think that's enough. What we need to do is be presenting not yes or no. We need to go beyond that and be presenting choices that are equally as valuable to the animal. So if I'm walking in the woods, I might be following my dog, and she has a choice of which direction to go. Each direction is equally valuable. Much different than, presenting something to your dog. Say it's a food foraging toy, and your dog is afraid of it, but they have to interact with it to get their meal. What would be more appropriate is, here is your meal in the normal way of presentation, and here is a new item, and please feel free to choose. And based on those choices, then you, the human, can modify what you do next. So agency is important to all of us. We all know, particularly right now, we're in a pandemic, our choices are limited, it can be frustrating, overwhelming, and we never want to put our animal in that position. And then equally important on the that little model I didn't show you because you're not watching my presentation, when I talked about those enrichment categories, would be safety and security for our animal. Safety is really our job to keep our animal protected from physical harm. We can do that through the use of things like long lines, appropriate harnesses, fencing, gates, and not putting our animal in a position where they would be physically harmed. On the animal side, on the dog side, is this feeling of being protected from harm, and that's security. It really is dependent on the dog whether they feel secure. We might have the safest environment impossible, free from physical injury for the dog, but if they do not feel secure, that can have a profound effect on every aspect of their life. So thinking about that again, knowing how to read your dog's feedback signals and body language will help to guide you to improve your dog's feeling of security. So we're at a point where we've thought about the categories, we've defined enrichment, but how do we decide, or how do we determine if something we are doing or providing or presenting is actually enriching for our animal? You can ask yourself a couple of questions. First of all, does the animal have agency? Do they have a choice? If you decide that your animal needs some social interaction and you bring them to a big family gathering with a lot of dogs, your dog doesn't have a choice about doing that. However, if you arrive and you recognize that either your dog, yes, is fully engaged happily and eagerly with family members and other dogs, great. And if not, it's your job to remove. So does the animal have agency? You can observe, you can and should and always should observe your animal and how they interact with or behave during this opportunity that you've presented. And I'm saying opportunity, and it might sound a little bit like I'm talking all about active things, but this could be as simple as, sitting on the couch with your dog. Is that something they want to do, or are you forcing them, which we should never do? And then the other part of that, the kind of the evaluation, is what happens afterwards. What does the animal's behavior look like after whatever this enrichment opportunity you've provided is? Are they calm? Are they relaxed? Have the needs that you sought to meet, have they been met? Does it result in a more behaviorally healthy animal? So just to kind of sum that up, remember that enrichment is not limited to food foraging toys. It should never be an impediment to eating or frustration causing. Enrichment is not a cause for worry, never forced on your dog. It should always be choice. It certainly is not the same for everyone. You're watching me look at my notes. So what it is meeting an animal's needs in all of those categories that I mentioned before. To be sustainable for the human half of the relationship, it's about planning, assessing, observing, and modifying, providing opportunities to express species typical behavior, and that's based on breed and individual, and it should be safe and enjoyable. So I had said earlier that I was going to add one thing to that list that I've talked about, and let me just grab the time here. 24 minutes. Okay, rolling on. Add something to that list of enrichment categories, and I think time should be on that list, at least for myself, and as a reminder that how valuable that is for our dogs. Our dogs need time to learn, to grow, to interact with their environment, to interact with other species or conspecifics in their own time frame. We humans tend to rush about, and part of that rushing about is limiting the amount of time our dog has to process information that's coming into them from all angles from the environment. So I think one of the best gifts we can get, and one of the greatest needs, is to give our animal, our dog, time for sniffing, gathering information, time to have trusting relationships grow, and to explore their world without being pressured or pushed by us. So let's see here. I'm going to just check my comments. Yep. Oh my goodness, I'm way behind. So thank you all who are watching. Yeah, Susie Ann, yes, she says, hi Monica, yes, yes, yes to the feeling of safety, absolutely. It's almost impossible to function when you don't have that feeling of security. If you have worries, very hard to do anything else. So I just thought I have a couple more minutes, and I thought I would talk about a few of the things that I do with my dog, and remembering that each dog is an individual, they have specific needs, and anything that I might do with and for my dog could be totally inappropriate for your dog. So keeping in mind safety and security and agency. I mentioned earlier that we do free work. I love that. It meets multiple needs of my dog. It is very calm activity. It's low impact. It's multi-sensory, and it's me relax too. So that's one of the things I really enjoy. We do a lot of woods meandering where I just pick a specific amount of time. I don't have any particular destination in mind, and my dog leads the walk. And if she asks me for guidance, typically just by a little look, I'm certainly there for that for her. Another need that we meet of my dog, because she has generalized anxiety, is we spend an amount of time in contact with her veterinary behaviorist to help her in that area to improve improve her overall well-being. She has many opportunities for licking and chewing, both of which have been shown to reduce stress and promote calming. She has, I'm a little bit of a bed addict, but she has choice, agency about which bed she sleeps in. She has different types of beds. They're scattered throughout the house, so the opportunity for calm and rest is kind of all around her, and she can choose where she decides would be best for her. I love backpack walks. I don't know if any of you have done those. You just basically put a couple of interesting items in a backpack, go outside, pick a location, sit down. Again, you're giving your dog time. You open your backpack, you take these items out, you investigates them. It's a shared social experience. You might have something for the dog to chew or lick in that backpack, maybe a toy to play with, whatever is suited to your particular dog. And when your dog is done, that's good. Pack it up and back into the house. And if your dog is worried about being outside, you can just do this in your house. Put a few items in a bag, pick a location, and the same thing. Let's see. We certainly work on cooperative care because the need for health is and physical well-being is right up on the list. And because our dogs are limited in their choices with veterinary care, we want to try to make that experience as pleasant for them as possible. We do taste testing, snuffling. We have some indoor sniff gardens. What on earth did I write here? We do nothing together, or nothing separately. There are times when we just are with each other, not doing anything in particular, because we have to remember that enrichment doesn't mean entertaining your dog all the time. It's meeting their needs, and one of their needs is for independence. So if they are unable to be independent naturally, then it's our job to help them do that. But just being in an area with your dog, that can be quite enriching for them, regardless of whether you're interacting. So let me just check here. So I think we're probably, let me see, yeah, get a few more minutes. So just kind of wrapping it all up, you can find a million ideas for activities to do with your dog. Canine Enrichment Facebook group. You will see thousands of posts. As long as you bear in mind, and Ann Rogers, who's going to be speaking later today, she has an awesome program, and she'll be telling you about that. As long as you bear in mind that enrichment is aimed at the individual, what someone else is doing is not necessarily what's appropriate for your dog, or what's enriching for your dog, or what's right for your dog. So have an open mind, be open to trying some things, planning, and then observing, and then modifying as necessary. Enrichment should never be a transactional approach. My dog does not need to do anything to have her needs met. She does not have to perform to receive the nutrition she needs. She doesn't have to do anything to have her needs met. Enrichment really gives us an amazing opportunity to appreciate the uniqueness of our animals that we share our lives with, because while we're doing enrichment planning, we're doing a lot of observation, and you will see things that you never noticed before when you're really quietly observing your dog. Yeah, it's in so many of the things that we do that may be considered enrichment. There is no pressure. So that is good for both human and animal. And I would say it's a learning journey over a lifetime, because just like us, needs change over time, and every day that you interact with or observe your dog or animal, you'll learn something new. So I'm probably going to end a little bit early, because I think I'm talked out, and it's early morning for me. I'm going to post a few, because I couldn't share my presentation. I'm going to post a few probably photos in the comments, and I have just a little guide that I'll post up there. I'll post the link to too, if anyone wants to fill that in. It's a little starting point, just talking about, take a few minutes to research your breed, look at your individual dog, and you might find that helpful to you. So I want to just thank you all for joining in, and if you have any questions on the replay or later, I will be checking back in, and I'll respond to whatever I can. So thank you very much, and onward and upward to the next presenter. And thanks, Ruby. All righty. Have a great day.